Well, I am so excited to be here. There has been a lot of movement in specifically how we can leverage these dollars into on-the-ground safety projects for the Permian Basin region. My team at Kimley-Horn, we have had the absolute honor to work on several of these projects just in the last couple of years. Everything I'm going to be talking about today relates to those projects and has been going just since last fall. So when we talk about momentum and opportunity, there is plenty of it going on out here in the Permian Basin. I think it was a good placement as well. I think Kirk did an excellent job explaining a lot of the background for what our teams, the why behind how these dollars have been allocated. So I may kind of speed through some early slides since Kirk covered that so well in his purpose. So mostly for this presentation, when I talk about leveraging federal dollars, we're talking about a specific federal funding program that was established by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or the bill, and that is the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, or we call it SS4A. And then we're going to talk about how SS4A has already caught hold out here in the Permian Basin region and what projects are going on through that grant program. So these are some of those purpose slides that I told you I'd kind of speed through, but just to talk about the narrative behind SS4A and how it got started. You know, I think it's really interesting out here, the PRSC, it's been founded, you know, Michael, you mentioned since about 2016 is when these conversations started. So road safety has always been a priority for transportation professionals out here, but a specific trend happened in 2020. I don't know if y'all remember that year, maybe something happened, I'm not sure. But what ended up happening is the red line there shows our VMT, which is number of vehicles on the road or vehicle miles traveled. And the bars that you're seeing there are roadway fatalities. And this is national data taken from NHTSA, but essentially in 2020, we were driving significantly less and fatalities continued to rise at the same pace. And so what we found was that fatalities per 100 million VMT rose significantly. And this was a big deal. It raised a big red flag right as the bipartisan infrastructure law was getting off the ground and as they were prioritizing grant money. This is another trend that unfortunately I feel we're all too familiar with, which is that bicyclists and pedestrians continue to be at a higher risk year over year. This is also data from the US Department of Transportation. But what you can see is that for pedestrians and bicyclists, the rate of fatalities is spiking at a higher rate than roadway fatalities. And so this combined with that rise in roadway fatalities overall really led to that question of how can we make a safer system? And Vision Zero and the Safe System approach with Kirk described earlier tackles just that. And so when we talk about Vision Zero, you know, the old approach to maybe some of these practices would say that traffic deaths are inevitable. Yes, they're tragic, but they're going to happen. It may have said that we should assume that people should be driving perfectly and that there's individual responsibility when an incident does occur, or that the cost of these improvements is just too expensive. How can we find the money? This is the old way of thinking. Since then, FHWA has been really leading the charge on adopting this new way of thinking with Vision Zero, and that's that traffic deaths are preventable, that we need to integrate human failing in approach. That's exactly what Kirk was mentioning with the Safe Systems approach. We want to focus specifically on preventing fatal and severe injury crashes. We talk about that a lot when we talk about these metrics. Basically, we understand that crashes will happen, but we don't need to accept fatality and severe injury with crashes, right? So, and then we need to build systems around us that can protect us when crashes do occur. So that's that systems approach. And that saving lives is not expensive. I think Michael's remarks at the beginning and Kirk as well about the importance of just even one life, one human life, when we are investing in these systems. There's a huge weight to that, and we all have a part of that responsibility. So this led in January 2022. This was when the bipartisan infrastructure law was first getting passed, and USDOT and FHWA announced this new program called Safe Streets and Roads for All. So this is the funding program that we'll be diving into today. And there are two categories of funds in this program. So the first category is called planning and demonstration. And so this is where a lot of the work has been currently going, is identifying through the planning process what roads need to be prioritized, what projects are appropriate, so that then you can get into implementation, which is that second category of funds. And implementation dollars are basically construction dollars, which is why I've got my nice little crane icon there. But what we are working towards for all of these communities is, in order to be eligible for those construction dollars, you must have a safety action plan in place. And so we'll talk in just a moment about what is a safety action plan and the communities that are currently undergoing that process here in the Permian Basin. So we talked about Vision Zero. Kirk, you mentioned there are several cities in Texas that have adopted Vision Zero. We are constantly updating this map as we hear of new ones. But the big one, the most recent that I wanted to highlight, was the city of Midland, who they've adopted a Vision Zero policy just here in April, along with their Vision Zero action plan. And our team had the pleasure of working with the city to adopt that plan just here this year. But there are several other communities that are working towards that, city of Lubbock as well, and then El Paso is also a recent one. But there are many other communities who are also working towards this. So when we talk about a safety action plan, the city of Midland has recently adopted their safety action plan. There are some required components, and so I wanted to walk through what makes a safety action plan comprehensive. This is our team specialty, is helping our clients and cities create these safety action plans, and so this is kind of our bread and butter. It's been really helpful to have the SS4A program really funneling dollars into these efforts. And so I'm going to try to quickly walk through. There's basically 8 components, and I wanted to follow that up with examples of different communities in West Texas that have integrated these different components. So the first one is leadership commitment and goal setting, which is the handshake icon there. I've highlighted here that there are a lot of different ways that we make sure that leadership is involved in the safety planning process. But I wanted to highlight a recent example. This is a post from Mayor Lori Blong in the city of Midland, and she has been extremely involved in the city's Vision Zero efforts, including a recent announcement that she posted about traffic fatalities being at their all-time low since January of 2021. That was the July numbers. So big win that they wanted to highlight. And she highlighted this in order to promote their new program, which is with the City of Midland's Police Department, about increasing enforcement around targeted areas that have a history of the most fatal and severe crashes. So having this kind of leadership buy-in is extremely important from the get-go and, of course, at adoption, to make sure that the plans that are being set in place are obviously getting buy-in and that we're getting movement on the implementation. The next component is our planning committee. And so I've highlighted, this is just an example here of an activity that we did with the City of Midland. They had present tense, Vision Zero Task Force. We established that at the beginning of the project, and they continue to have a role within the city. But we did an activity with them, identifying what roads had the worst crashes according to their experience. We also paired that with the actual crash history, but this helped us understand not just where crashes have occurred, but where you have some near misses, because we all know these roads and we drive them every day. Just because a crash has occurred doesn't mean that that is where the worst problems are, right? So we all know of those areas that we drive every day that may not have a crash, but have a near miss. And so this was an activity that we did, but having a steering committee involved throughout the development of your plan helps make sure that those human experiences and those local perspectives are always present. It's not just big data telling you where things should go, but also informed by members of the public. But speaking of data, we also take data into account, and we have created a high injury network. I hope Miranda doesn't mind. I've included an example. So this is our most recent example of a high injury network. The Permian Basin Regional Planning Commission is currently undergoing a safety action plan, and we have actually our next meeting is November 5th, and we're going to be presenting this information, so y'all get to kind of get a preview of this if you're on the committee or not. But we take a look at the traffic volumes and the crash fatalities and serious injuries to be able to identify which roads have the highest rates of those crashes. And so this is just one example, Ector County, this is their high injury network, those black roads there. And so what this identifies is using this data, this helps us narrow our lens a bit on specifically for construction projects, which roads need the most work from the start. Another important component of the safety action plan is public engagement. And so this is a photo that we have from our recent event. This is also from Ector County, but my partner Brandon Hardaway, who's based out of our Lubbock office, he and I have been traveling all over the Permian Basin. We have, I think, 14 of the 16 counties in our study covered so far with public meetings. But the purpose of this is not just to hear from the steering committee, but also members of the public, but the same importance on making sure that our recommendations are informed and that they're supported by the public, and also that the public is informed of what this process is, what it isn't, helping maybe dispel some concerns in case there are some. I know some people, they're very protective of their speed limits and things, so we help them understand that it's more than just setting speed limits. There are other improvements that can help increase safety in the region. We also have equity considerations. This is a very important component. I think Kirk touched on it well at the beginning of his presentation, that minority populations are disproportionately affected by road safety, and also that age groups, our youngest drivers, are very affected by the road safety problem. So in the city of Midland, the age group of 15 to 24-year-olds is 70% more likely to be the victim of a fatal or severe injury crash. And this is compared against the census data for the city of Midland. So you're 70% more represented if you're in that age group in not being involved in a crash, but being the victim of the crash, which is important, or the first most harmful event, if you want to talk data. But that's also a trend that we see in 25 to 34-year-olds as well. And so age plays an important factor, as well as race and ethnicity. And so we take a look at that as well, help understand how those trends are affecting road safety for those populations as well that are more vulnerable. So then we also have policy and process changes. I think the thing that is most commonly associated with the safety action plans is that construction, that engineering, and the data. But we also look at it from a planning lens. What kind of education campaigns are being run? What other encouragement or enforcement campaigns can we run to help tackle the safety problem? In the Safe Systems approach, this is where we talk about redundancy. So there's a really great, I couldn't find it in time, but there's a great graphic of almost looking like Swiss cheese of how all the different elements of a Safe Systems approach, where you have increased enforcement, you have encouragement in the community, you have education and engineering, and each of those is going to cover a piece, but as you have the holes of the Swiss cheese, they cover themselves up, and it basically builds that redundancy into the system. So we know that the education piece, is not as impactful as enforcement or engineering, but it is critical to making sure that our users are safe and that they're well educated on the issues that we're trying to spread. So then the second to last component is our project selections. So I wanted to highlight very quickly, this is specifically Lamesa Road, which was highlighted in the City of Midland's Vision Zero plan. And they specifically chose Lamesa Road because there was a very tragic crash that happened just last year with a student of the nearby elementary school who passed away very tragically. And the city was already undergoing the safety action plan, and they said, we need to do something about this right now because it was very important to everybody in the community. So we studied that road in detail, came up with some specific recommendations to help increase safety along the corridor. And then the city went and turned around and they applied for some implementation funding from SS4A to fund the construction of these improvements, and they were awarded $8.5 million to begin with this corridor. And so I wanted to highlight that as a recent success story. It is possible to bring these dollars into the region. There's very little impact to existing residents, but it leverages a huge pot of funding that can really help achieve that Vision Zero goal for residents in the West Texas region. And then lastly, the final requirement is about progress and transparency. So for all of the planners in the room, I think sometimes it can be all too familiar that we do the analysis and we come up with the projects and we make our checklist, and then barriers get in the way and you can't finalize or you can't implement. And so one of the requirements that they have for these SS4A plans is about transparency and reporting on progress. So the screenshot that I have here, this is from a memo that is not published yet because you're going to see it next year published by Midland County. And this is an example of a annual report that they're going to be publishing. Their action plan is separated by emphasis areas. So this is an example of distracted driving. You can see the chart there, shows the baseline of what distracted driving crashes look like in their study area, and they're going to continue to report on those next 5 years what those crashes were. And then the table underneath shows some actions that they have in their plan of how are they going to tackle the distracted driving problem. They're going to have that annual progress report to report on those steps, and if there are changes that need to be made year over year, it gives them the opportunity to do so. So these are all just different examples, but combined into one, that is just what one single safety action plan will give you. So it's a very multifaceted process. And so with that, I wanted to quickly touch on the specifics of some of the projects. I know I've kind of been throwing some names out there of different areas that have been undergoing the safety action plan process, but I want to talk more about each project individually. So this is a map here of, actually this is the Permian Basin Regional Planning Commission's study area boundary. Now there are a couple of areas you'll see here that are darker gray, and that's actually because these are areas that have their own safety action plans that they're undergoing. And our team has had the absolute pleasure to be able to work on all of these plans cohesively. And so the whole Permian Basin Regional Planning Commission is 17 counties, and we're doing 16 of those counties in one regional plan currently. The city of Midland and Midland County recently wrapped up their Vision Zero efforts, and then Reeves County, lastly, is currently in the middle of their process. I'm actually going out there to Pecos just after this luncheon to host another committee meeting for them. So again, lots of progress happening. So I wanted to walk through quickly this timeline of everything that's been happening. When I say that this has been happening for about a year, I'm dead serious. August 2023 is when the city of Midland first kicked off their Vision Zero project, and they partnered with the county. So the county actually did get an SS4A planning grant, and they applied for funds just for their area south of I-20 because they know that that is specifically a problem area for their, especially the freight traffic that goes down there with the oil fields. So the city of Midland noticed that, and they wanted to partner together with them, so they put in some money as well. And the two of them helped launch this Vision Zero Midland campaign back in August 2023. Then in about March, early spring of this year, the Reeves County project kicked off along with the Permian Basin Regional Planning Commission. And then in April, the city of Midland finalized and adopted their safety action plan. So that was the first one to be adopted. Midland County had their plan adopted in August of this year. And then also at the same time, that was when it was announced that the city of Midland was awarded their funding for Lamesa Road. So if you think about the timeline here, they began this process just back last August, and a year later, they were awarded that $8.5 million. And so it really is something that can make a quick impact. It's not something that is as slower pace as people realize, I think. And so it's a huge win for the community. They're very excited to begin the construction of those improvements. And then spring of next year, around April 2025, that is when we are anticipating adoption for both the Reeves County and the Permian Basin Regional Planning Commission plans. So we're kicking all these off and slowly getting to these adoption phases, but there's still more work to do beyond that adoption, and we're really excited about all that progress. So just really quickly, I wanted to walk through each project. So the City of Midland, it was the first Vision Zero program for the Permian Basin region, which was really exciting. They did self-fund their own CSAP, and they were awarded that $8.5 million. So that was something that they elected to do to speed up the process a little bit, was put in their own city funds in order to get that plan off the ground. They really wanted to time that with Midland County. But the county CSAP, that was funded by the SS4A grant program. And they are, like I mentioned, focused purely on the area south of I-20, the area that is around like the other areas of the county, the northern portion of I-20, that is being covered in the PBRPC plan. So with that in mind, they wanted to focus on their priority areas. And they were actually funded for some improvements at the 5 Points intersection. If y'all are familiar with that corridor, it is south of I-20. It's a diagonal Andrews Highway road intersecting with a few kind of funky farm to market roads. That whole intersection is going to be reconfigured soon. That was their highest crash intersection in the whole study area. And so it was not funded by SS4A. They actually got creative and they went through a different federal channel to get that funding, but Commissioner Sanchez led that effort in the county, and that's a very exciting win for them as well. So they'll be working with TxDOT to improve that intersection and reconfigure it to allow for better safety. So the two plans together, they came together and hired Kimley-Horn and our team to basically manage both projects in tandem. They shared efforts on the public engagement because ultimately what they wanted was one shared vision of Vision Zero Midland. Members of both the county and the city, all the residents in that area, they all identify as residents of Midland. And so we wanted to create that single message and vision for their future educational campaigns as well. And we kicked off last summer and we finalized this summer, like I mentioned. So then that takes us to the Permian Basin Regional Planning Commission. So we have had 2 of our steering committee meetings, and our third committee meeting is just in November. I've seen a couple of folks in the audience today who are on that steering committee, so we're looking forward to seeing y'all again to talk about the high injury networks and other data. That is our next topic. I wanted to plug very quickly, our online engagement for this plan is currently open. Miranda and I passed around some of the business cards that are for our project website. If you live in any of those 16 counties, I highly encourage y'all, take that business card home, scan the QR code, learn more about the project. We do currently have a survey open. There's a map survey as well. If you are driving home, you encounter some roads maybe that have issues, we really would like as much public input as possible. These regional plans are such a large scale and they impact so many people. So we are excited to be currently having the opportunity to hear from the public right now. There are also, if you are like me and you kind of prefer paper form-based surveys, we did pass around a few copies of that survey. If you'd rather just fill it out before you drive home, you can give it to myself or Miranda, and we can make sure that your responses get recorded. But I'd be remiss if I didn't plug that we currently have that engagement open right now. And then lastly, the Reeves County Safety Action Plan. We have our meeting the committee meeting number 2 today. So I'll be driving out to Pecos after this to attend that, but we're really excited to be kicking off some of the analysis phase of that project. And that draft plan is expected in March of next year. So lots of projects to talk about, lots of efforts. Here is my contact information. If you have any questions or would like to learn more about the specific safety action plan process, what the cost is like, and what the impact it can have on your community, I'm available anytime to talk. So But with that, that was all the slides that I had today. Ellen told me that I may have time for questions, but I'm going to let them a couple minutes. So if there are any questions about anything I presented today, I will take them. And if not, then I can let the next speaker go. Cameron, yes.
1 second, Cameron. Let me bring this over to you so everybody can hear you in the back.
Thank you. Would you explain, by giving a couple of examples, of what the $8.5 million grant for Lamesa Road included?
Yes, and this is exactly why I put that summary sheet on here, was so I could reference that. So, and I know this is probably a bit small for the folks in the back. So these are the corridor recommendations that we have with Lamesa Road. Access management is a big component of, at least for the city of Midland, a lot of their roads having the two-way center left turn lanes creates a lot of conflicts. There's a lot of, along Lamesa Road, there's actually not a lot of businesses that front that road, but there are quite a few residential intersections along this roadway. And so what we found was there is a lot of crashes occurring, and mind you, fatal and severe injury crashes occurring with folks who are either trying to turn into their neighborhood or turn out of their neighborhood. And so this is that angle opposite direction style of crashes. And so what we recommend is managing access a little bit better along that corridor, either in the form of a median, in the form of some driveway consolidation. It is something that will be up for engineering study, but specifically the access management was a big piece, I know, for Lamesa. Also, corridor lighting and continuous pedestrian facilities were also recommended. So if there was a median constructed on Lamesa, that would provide opportunity for some center running illumination, which is very important, especially because that section of Lamesa is getting more into the southern area of the city. Excuse me. Excuse me, I have allergies. Getting into the southern portion of the city that is just a little bit less urban, and lighting is less frequent out there. And then we also want to make sure to upgrade all of these signals along the corridor with radar detection. This is actually, it's more of an operational improvement, but what we have found, especially with intersection operations, is that we've all been in this position where maybe we've been stuck at a traffic signal for a little too long. We're stuck at that red. We get frustrated, and maybe we take that left turn even though we maybe shouldn't. And so the current detection out there is a camera detection, and what we've been told by the city is that based on the sun's position at certain hours, especially the peak hours, you get sun glare into the cameras and the detection is totally kaput. So by upgrading that to radar, it would help with the operations out there as well. So it's one of those rare moments where operational and safety improvements can work together.
Any other questions? Well, the first half of the meeting today, I think you can see kind of how we set it up, right? We talked big picture early on. We talked general framework. We wanted you to have a good grounding and understanding in sort of the large picture, both federally and at the state level. And then we quickly got down into the weeds, as you just saw. We're able to talk about programs that not only are moving the needle, but you can see where they're literally micro-targeted in certain communities. And that is something that I think is the real secret sauce, if you will, of this particular program. We're actually delighted to be involved with it. Our own Ellen Ramsey is the chair of one of the committees that
Yes.
that she put up on the screen. Has been involved in getting those grant dollars sent down here to the most local of levels. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
you,
you.
Monica Powell.